A lot of people say Bill Hayes king, Buddy Holly's the king or whatever, but to me they're all kings. To me they've all played their part in rock and roll.
Suddenly, out of the blue, you hear this music and you think, oh my God, what is this? And it's a fellow called Elvis, and there's Bill Haley and the Comets, and Father was saying to me, what on earth is this, my girl? What are you listening to? And Dad just accepted the fact that he was listening to music that he didn't understand, but if I liked it and I was having fun with it, we were great. Once all this came along, I was out on a high, you know, and music, Bill Haley and everybody, Elvis and all that, that was my life.
It all goes together, even like the American cars or British classic cars, it's the whole package.
I had a boyfriend who lived not too far away from me, and he had a bit of money, you know, so therefore he'd take me out in his car, and I used to think I was the bee's knees. We never had a car at all, and it was quite something when this young man would turn up at my door and everybody would want to see this beautiful car. So, you know, it was wonderful. Before I met this fella, I used to have to come home on a bus, a double-decker bus you'd have to get a ticket from the ballroom, and you'd be able to get on a bus and the bus would take you home. And then I was dropped off more or less at my door. And then the cars started coming along. The fellas would offer you a lift home, but my father said, you don't get in anybody's car, my young lady, you don't get in anybody's car. So, you know, I had to behave myself, and but you know, I did get in this one. And there were a few fellas that had cars, but not many, and they were only little tiny ones. You know, you couldn't do much in a car that was so tiny.
Whilst the Teds were listening to all the right records and making sure they looked the part, going hand in hand with rock and roll music was the dance moves, which were mainly taken from another American import, the jive.
I was born in Portsmouth, and growing up as a teenager, believe me, that was really great fun with all the different ships coming in from abroad. We met so many people and made so many friends abroad, and this is how I managed to learn rock and roll. We had lots of them in that evening, and my friend said to me, there is a gentleman coming over to speak to you, and he came over to me, and all of a sudden I looked up and saw this 6'5" American, and he said to me, do you jive, ma'am? And I said, no, but I'd really like to learn. I always fancied myself as a dancer as a child, so there I was, up, the only person on the dance floor with this big American rocking and rolling, and I followed every move he made. As we came back the next weekend, obviously this was ballroom dancing in those days, we started rocking and rolling. The manager had to stand up on the stage and say to me, you can't do that sort of dancing round here. He said, I might let you dance on the outside of the ballroom, but not, you know, not in the middle. Well, within weeks, believe me, we had taken over the ballroom and rock and roll was here to stay.
Got left feet where dancing's concerned, but I love watching other people dance.
Yeah.
There's
And
such a
I hurt my
variety.
back anyway.
Such a variety of jiving, strolling, bopping.
Yeah.
And even you just take strolling, people do it their own ways as well.
Yeah.
You know, so there's such a variety in it.
When you go to some venues, like the Teds, like where some people might be rocking, but then the Teds will probably go up to a bloke and his bird and ask her to dance. I mean, you do that on this scene now. It's normal. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, but then it was like really a punch up there, or highly likely to be, because it was a provocative thing to do.
They all stood back preening themselves and just looking down and looking at the girls and saying, fancy that one, fancy that one. But they didn't dance. But they don't rock and roll. There's only a very small number of Teds that ever do.
Like trying to brag, but they could dance, and I never had to ask anybody. They all come and ask me. So, and I used to win competitions in the pub castle in the Old Kent Road. I used to win the competition every other week. So, you know, get a trophy or a bottle of champagne or whatever.
The older generation weren't impressed with the Teddy Boys. Not the look, the music, any of it. But the more the parents tutted and gave it a big thumbs down, the more the Teddy Boys loved it.
My father was a 14-hour shift man, 7 days a week, and when I did see him, it wasn't nothing, no conversation between us, but I got my first made-to-measure suit. I hardly ever seen my father, and he happened to come in this night, seen his suit and chucked it on the back of the fire. He said about laughing, and I said, well, Mother paid for it. And she said, well, you got to pay me back. And I said, well, you burnt it, let you pay for it. And that was it now, you know. I had to go and get another one, keep over at my mate's house. Then it came to I wore the earring, and then I got thrown out of house. 16 years old, but I was all right because I had a mill across the road and then a mill back when our old man was out. Yeah, this is how it went in those days.
I don't know if my dad really, at the time, really picked up on the publicity part of it. Like, but I mean, I managed to get me draped suit really without too much kind of trouble. But so I paid for it. He didn't. But other things like the earrings and the tattoos, like, he didn't like that at all.
So they weren't very popular at home, and they were soon to earn themselves a reputation with the general public, chiefly down to some cinema riots caused by Bill Haley and the Comets singing their song Rock Around the Clock in the groundbreaking film Blackboard Jungle.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight.
Apparently, when Bill and his boys launched into their hit song, the audience of mainly young Teds went absolutely crazy, dancing and jiving in the aisles. Unfortunately, they tended to get carried away, and it all got a bit out of hand.
The film itself looks quite tame, but everyone, there's riots in the cinemas and everything. You see the old cuttings in the papers.
Well, that was more.
Teds were barred from Southampton.
That was more frustration though, because they weren't allowed to dance.
Yeah, because dancing.
When rock and roll came out, you know, it was like electrifying, with Rock Around the Clock, and the kids weren't allowed to dance.
Some of the other places where they banned Rock Around the Clock. I mean, it's like Southampton, in like the headlines, Ted's caused riot, Ted's banned, you know, Ted's not allowed in pubs or clubs wearing the drapes, the uniform type of thing.
All the political parties didn't like you too much. Religious people never liked you at all. And how can I say, the authorities weren't too clever on us either.
More than 50 years later, it's pretty hard for us to understand how a fairly tame song, sung by a slightly podgy bloke wearing a kiss curl and a bow tie, caused a riot. But it did. And we all know the British press love those situations, and sure enough, they were soon working themselves into a right old lather, demanding that something must be done. But how bad was it in reality?
I don't think that teddy boys were naturally the bad thing that everybody tries to portray them that they were. I think that teddy boys actually were part of a youth culture, part of a fashion, and inbuilt into that there was a few fights, there was competition, and that sort of thing.
We used to go like into the ballroom dancing place, and like as if the doors come open, like when the American gunslingers come in there, and like, you know, they're all draped up, everyone turns around, like, you know, all a bit
go
like
quiet.
a gone quiet, and then you kind of saunter up to the bar, and nothing, you might not actually do anything nasty and that, but you just, it was that presence they could feel.
They felt an edge when you walked in.
To be honest, I never really knew that the Teds were, you know, anything other than just young lads in creepy shoes and thick-soled shoes and long jackets.
All these years later, it's easy to blame the press and accuse them of making a meal of things, which they undoubtedly did. But it wasn't all hype. There could be a slightly darker side to being a teddy boy.
We had turf, if you know what I mean. The different gangs had different turfs, mostly centred around the coffee bars. And that's how we used to do it, like, you know. I was in a street gang called the Gypsies. There was, you had the Mavericks and people like that in Bristol, different street gangs. But that's how we were, all go about together like.
Ted's had the flick knives, but it's more of a fashion statement really, like, you know, you always like kind of looking at it or what, or sharpen a pencil sitting on the wall, all that type of thing. Might be throwing it in a tree, but although obviously it was dodgy really because something could have happened, but, you know.
Well, years ago, like me, I used to carry a flick knife and knuckle dusters, and years ago, like. And of course, that was the other things you carried, like, you know, the flick knife, knuckle dusters, as well as the comb knife. And they did. People sort of walked across the other side of the road when they see a teddy boy coming along, like, you know. And being able to in groups as well, that made them look sort of, you know, oh, blimey, you know, tormenting, like that.
And then there were the tattoos. Tattoos weren't exactly new, but some of them were a bit more than having the word mum on your forearm. These were just another statement and celebration of rock and roll rebellion.
To me, a tattoo's got to mean something.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, either most of mine are to do with rock and roll or family, and it's got to mean something to me. I wouldn't just go and have a tattoo for the sake of having a tattoo. It's got to be something I really want because it's going to be there for my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
definitely.
So I think you've got to think about it, make sure you want it. And I was in my 30s before I had my first tattoo, but that was because I didn't think I would stand the pain. And since then I've not stopped really. That's Elvis, which I expect everyone would know. And that's Chuck Berry. And that's Little Richard. And on this arm has got Fats Domino, Gene Vincent and Eddie Cochran. And then Billy Fury's down here. And that's my dog. When she passed away, I had that in memory of her.
Yeah, I've got two swallows on either side of there. I wanted to get them done so they were in between the quiff, you understand me? So, you know, so it looked cool. Like. And he did it, I thought he'd done a good job.